Of course, we're broadcasting it again, so as we ask questions, we'll pass the mic around where not only can we hear and folks in the room hear, but more importantly, your colleagues can hear. When I say stadium seating, as you know, hopefully by now, and as we committed to from the outset of having these meetings, and we're into the 11th or 12th.
This may be the 13th.
We may have lost count, but we're somewhere getting into the teens now. I think it's been really good to stay on the same page. Thank you, obviously, for the work that you do every day, and encourage you about the future. As it relates to that, the other thing, as you recall, that we have said from the outset is that we would tell you the truth as we know it. And what that's always meant from my previous experience has been is that a decision is made or something is confirmed, then we're going to relay it to you. If it has not been made, not confirmed, that means, and we don't relay something, that means that's the truth as we know it. In other words, nothing has been done that would necessitate or allow us to be able to convey some information to you. In light of that, actually just apropos, Chairman Pitts walked in. I know he's not set up to say anything, but I want to give him the mic anyway. But at least say hello to us, because they may not have seen you since you've been back.
Just wanted to stop by and hear what we have to say, what you have to say, and your reaction, and we're going to do what's in your best interest, because I can't tell you, I've been with the county now going in my 13th year. Very appreciative rather, of what you do, what you have done, and will continue to do for us. So we glad that you're here, and hopefully, and I trust everything's going to work out for the best for all of us concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as I was saying, so with the commitment to tell you the truth as we know it, again, that implies that as decisions are made, we're going to tell you. So there was a decision made by the chairman and the board yesterday in a unanimous fashion that affirms a direction as it relates to FID. The direction is, as long as Fulton County has the political and jurisdictional responsibility to maintain FID, we will also operate the services on a direct basis on FID. And if you think about it, while a lot of focus has been on certainly police and fire, and we'll talk about the implications that that decision has, it has always been our intention to do transportation services on FID, in other words, the maintenance of the road, trash pickup and the like, licensing, code enforcement. So none of that has changed, nor will it change with this decision. What does change, though, is that we have and did look at thoroughly different alternatives. The alternatives ranged from, and there were variations off of each one of these, contracting with the new city to provide those services. In other words, we go ahead and effectuate the transfers as planned for police and fire at the end of February, end of March, and then contract with the new city to provide those services back to the county for this jurisdiction known as FID. Secondly, we looked at perhaps bringing our sheriff's department into the mix. In other words, they are a law enforcement unit, and asked them to perform at least the law enforcement functions on FID, not the fire, obviously. We looked at a combination that was, let's do police perhaps and contract for fire, so that was in the mix. And then we looked at the thing on the other end of the spectrum, and that is let's just simply operate it as we do today, which would almost, if you thought of it, be the simplest of all options. In other words, we operate it today with fire and police, we would operate it tomorrow with fire and police, and that would continue until such time this jurisdiction is decided by the legislature and by the voters. So that being said, as the board deliberated that, and again, as we get into Q&A, the chairman and his colleagues are the ones that would make this decision, reflected upon what the pros and cons were with each model. But I think, and again, he can inform this better by his own words, but I think they came down with the notion, if you think about this, this makes a lot of practical sense. The basics of management say if I'm responsible for something, I need the authority to execute that responsibility. Does that all make sense to everyone, right? One of the worst positions you get in is I'm responsible and can't make something happen. So as long as they continue to be responsible, and they are the political leaders responsible for 450 residents or so, something in that neighborhood, a lot of business interest, and then just this geographical area, then they wanted the clear line of authority to continue to make things happen and provide public service. And just as he said, the appreciation for the employees that we have that do it every day, you that do it every day, then was the way for them to do that. The most simple, the most straightforward way. There will be a lot of questions with this that we want to get to and answer as it relates to, well, if you're interested in being a part of that, how do you indicate your interest? We have answers around that, and we have, by the way, one-page summary that starts to capture what we think are the frequently asked questions and then the answers. And I'm going to hand it over to Todd to go through that. You'll also want to know, well, this sounds fine for today, but what does that mean if FID is resolved in the end of 2018 by the legislature and by the voters? And we'll give you some indication of how we see that running out. And then, kind of lastly, does this preclude you from going to the new city of South Fulton? Not at all. I mean, that's all still fully in force. The mayor just walked in, so he can also comment on that process. So really, you have now two opportunities, which can be FID and city of South Fulton potentially, and both of them will have different appeals to different folks. But then, of course, you always have a third opportunity. That is some other department, some other jurisdiction. And as I went through, as I've explained several times before, my whole process with Bell South being bought by AT&T, 28 years into it, with that close to my retirement, just like many of you are, and I had to make the decision, am I going there, or am I coming or going somewhere else? And in the end, I decided the road less taken, so to speak, public sector and public service as opposed to staying in telecom. So everybody's decision is their own. There is no right or wrong one. You have to inform yourself. We want to give you the information, which is the purpose of today. But it's still, you'll find as we get through this process, it still comes down to your individual decision. We're not going to prescribe anyone going one place or the other, or not going one place or the other. We're not selling one over the other. It is purely an individual decision. Is that clear? Does that make sense that it's done that way? And then you have to take into account, and again, everybody's situation is different in terms of retirement plans, personal preferences, your view of how long FID would stay in its current state or not stay in its current state, prospects in the new city, prospects somewhere else. So it's a whole mixture of things. But I just want to underscore, in the end, I think the chairman, when he said his remarks, it's really is, we're going to try to make it, as we have with all of these policies as we've gone along, working with the new city and working internally, make it in your interest. I mean, these changes have occurred and continue to occur. Hopefully you get the spirit that we are still looking and attempting to look out for your interest in that process. And to the degree that there's some wrinkle that, and this is my last comment, some wrinkle in this latest decision that we have not thought of. Remember, we've come up with some things as we've written them on these boards that we had not thought of until somebody in this room brought it up and said, hey, did you guys remember that if you do this, then this happens? And the answer has been, no, that's a good point. And we've gone back and changed something because of that. So again, remember, sometimes only you can know something specific that otherwise we didn't think of, which is why I was calling the CEO of AT&T after I had left, put him a letter after I had left and telling him, do you mind if I work 2 more months to get to my net 35 years service and age and yada, yada, yada to get my insurance? And fortunately he said yes. Could have said no, but only I thought of it. And over somebody in HR didn't think of it, he was my direct boss. Somebody else didn't think of it. It had to fall to me. Unfortunately, I thought I was too late, but then he was gracious enough to grant it. Same thing with you. You have to be personally responsible for whatever decisions you make and be comfortable ultimately with that. Again, no right or wrong ones, all informed by information we provide you. All right, so Todd, I'll turn it over to you. And again, we're going to go through more or less now the implications and a one-pager on next steps.
Well, like Dick said, we try to get at least some questions that you may have. We'll put it in writing on a sheet of paper so you'd have it. So it wouldn't be like a question of whether you can remember what he said, so everybody sees the same answer. But this is, once again, it's January 25th, it's the same mantra, is the truth as we know it today. The transition dates for fire and police to the city of South Fulton currently are still standing, with fire February 26th, police is March 26th. On paper, we've got a transition for Parks and Rec, still a letter from the city for June 4th. Now, there's been some indication they may want to move that up, but that's still where we're at. We do not have a letter concerning transportation, public works folks, so that's still forthcoming. But for fire, pretty immediate, right? We're now within that month window almost of getting that to happen. So, like you said, our board made a decision yesterday. That's the first time. What changed? They said all items that basically are being serviced now, Fulton Industrial District will remain in Fulton Industrial District. Let me get my glasses on here. So how does that work? Of course, the first game plan is making sure we have what the org chart looks like for providing services in the Fulton Industrial District. I'll just call it FID for short. For those who don't, you may call it FIB. It's actually by law and definition under the provisions of the 97 law. It's called Fulton Industrial District. That's what we call it, FID. But essentially, we have to come up with staffing plans, equipment plans, determine what we need to provide those services. We certainly have been working on that a little bit on the side, but not really. We've got a little bit of work to do in the next couple of days to really nail it down. But essentially, we hope to receive those plans by next week. And once they're received, then we'll come up with a staffing plan for how many folks we need to actually staff. So how will positions be identified? Once the staffing analysis is done, we'll ensure a fair opportunity for all. We'll issue a 3-day countywide recruitment process for the various positions needed. And those current Fulton County employees are encouraged to apply. If you want to apply, I think Dick made it very clear, it's an individual decision for you whether you apply for the positions or not. And if you're interested and you're qualified. Certainly, the hiring departments can make the final decisions based on the register that the HR department gives them, but essentially as you go through, we're going to look at every position. I mean, we may get 6 or 7 candidates for a certain title. We may get 1 or 2. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All right, so will these positions be permanent, or temporary or part-time? Right now, obviously everything we're advertising will be permanent, just like it is today. We did a similar process, went to 3 days, but we did a process for code enforcement. We ended up keeping 1 individual in FID area, so it's a similar process to that, so we're trying to be consistent. All right. These are public safety positions, so the officers do retain their classified status. I know that's important to a lot of folks. If I'm selected for one of the positions, will I have the ability to negotiate my salary? Well, yes, if the position does end up being a promotion, right? Let's say that people apply and it ends up being a promotion for them, then they certainly get an opportunity. Now decisions regarding higher than minimum offers and things along those lines will be decided upon with the department head. If you accept a position in a lower grade, the HR department process will apply now. We passed some policies last year. If you step down several pay grades, and you have to take a demotion of pay, but you read that policy, you'll figure out exactly what it is. It's pretty simple to follow. Now, if I'm selected for one of these new positions, will my benefits be impacted? Well, you're a Fulton County employee, you'll be a Fulton County employee then, so no benefit impact. All right, if the positions are not filled from the current police and fire employees, what will happen? Well, we'll conduct normal competitive recruitment for the positions not filled by internal staff. If there's not people, so, which may mean later we can hire part-time employees, we can hire from outside. Gives us lots of options to fill the positions needed. The rest of the questions are on the back of your sheet. All right, how long would these positions remain with the county? Well, this is where it depends, all right? The requirement for the county to provide services is strictly dependent on the actions taken really by others. I will give you information that I know at hand, and there are potentially 2 different bills that may be proposed this session. Now, I don't know that they've been dropped yet. I know that they're getting signatures on the bill to be dropped, but I understand Roger Bruce has a bill that essentially what it does is it lifts the embargo, essentially the annexation restriction from FID. And then the second bill is intended to give it to a jurisdiction. In his bill, he's proposing to give it to the city of South Fulton. It could be that that bill gets negotiated. We don't know if it's gonna be South Fulton fully, it's gonna be a combo between South Fulton and another jurisdiction like Atlanta. So we don't know how that will come out of the process, but if those bills do pass, eventually it still has to go to who? The voters, right? So ultimately, you got to go in November to the voters. So we really won't know exactly what's going to happen to the Fulton Industrial District until that vote in November. So that's where it that's the depends part. Now, should I still apply for the city, to the city? I know they're making, I don't know what happened earlier this week, but I think that there was an opportunity to fill out applications for fire, is that right? Shake, there's some, I think fire applications are out there, my understanding. And sure, if you, we can't predict what's gonna happen, but if you want to apply for a position with the city, that's certainly, that's made independently by you. Now, what would happen to employees with the police department that are funded by the general fund? Which is a question that we get pretty much every time we're in here, right? So what we've decided to do there, that's another faction, let's be clear. In the board's discussion, they also want to keep Fulton County Police Department to handle matters that are general fund related. All right, let's be clear about that, because I guess that could have gone another way as well, but we tend to keep those functions on the general fund with those employees. That's the plan right now. So I know that they've gotten RIF letters, and we will deal with that. But the employees that are currently in those positions, we plan to keep. All right, those are the questions that we have ahead of time. That may not be all of them. You may have other questions, but it's where we are today, based on the board decision yesterday, and based on the fact that we have transition dates coming at us from the city of South Fulton. All right, it's your turn to ask questions. Do we have another? Here we go. Okay, remember the reason we have a mic is so that other people can hear this being recorded that couldn't be here today. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so the last question on your sheet talks about those employees that are funded by the general fund.
Yep.
And of course, I know I've asked the question several times about employees at the training center. So my question, as it relates to your question, is you're saying that you're gonna keep those functions under the general fund, but what about the employees that work at a general fund location, but they are not paid out of the general fund? How does that work, if you're saying you want to keep the same employees
So they work,
at a general
but they
fund
don't do,
location?
but they do city of South Fulton employment?
They are not paid out of the general fund.
Okay, well, we probably have little one-offs here or there. I'll figure that out separately. I've not looked at the list of employees carefully to see where people work and what is under general fund versus not general fund, but I'll be glad to look at that in depth and certainly get back with you.
In regards to the two stations in FID, we're talking about Station 11, Station 19, correct?
Yes.
Is 13 going to be in that? No? Yes? maybe
So the two stations that serve, there's three stations that serve FID. We got 19, 11, and then the station on Plummer Drive.
That's 13.
So certainly, what we'd like to do, certainly 11 and 19 for sure, they're in this Fulton Industrial District. We will probably be discussing with the city of South Fulton in regards to 13 and, maybe equipment we have, what they need, and versus coverage area, what we need. So we've got to negotiate with the city of South Fulton regarding some of those matters. So right now, we are not considering 13 as far as being a transfer. It's not staying with Fulton necessarily, but we've got to work out an arrangement on equipment, et cetera.
Okay. So my question, dealing with just these two stations and the positions that are attributed to it, are we talking about from top to bottom positions? Are you going to get another fire chief that's going to be all that, deputy chief,
Right.
what positions are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's what I've asked. So I'm hoping by next week, I'll have an org chart for the fire department for just FID, kind of a reduced fire department. So yes, there will be a fire chief for the Fulton Industrial District. That is correct. So there'll be a hierarchy and structure. Same for police.
Yeah, okay. All right. I may have a note on that.
Yeah. Well, I have to have a fire chief and police chief, right? There you go.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
So just to confirm that I understand correctly, you're saying that all current county employees with the Fulton County Police Department will have to apply for the Fulton County Police Department in order to stay in the FID district. There'll be no agreement as the city of South Fulton is offering where you'll just agree to keep whoever wants to stay and determine the process.
Okay, let's back, you said the word all about 4 times. So you.
Well,
So let's-
as needed based
So
upon your.
let's not
own-
talk about the general fund, let's talk about
No, I
police
didn't,
officers.
I didn't mention general fund.
Okay, now let's not talk, let's talk about the folks who serve both the FID, SSD, and right now under contract, the city of South Fulton. So,
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying, the
So what I'm saying is-
process to be employed with the Fulton County Police Department
We're gonna-
going forward.
right, we'll establish expositions in fire department that we need for this Fulton Industrial District. And then we'll open that up for, open recruitment for 3 days amongst anybody who'd like to apply. So then you apply for those jobs. If you want to stay in, when you get that job, certainly you stay Fulton County employed. If you apply and don't get that job, certainly you're eligible for working at the city if they offer you a job, or somewhere else. Now, if you decide you don't want, in other words, you do not want to apply for one of those jobs, you want to stay kind of currently working with the city, I mean, I say answer for the city, but the city has been very consistent the whole time that anybody wanting a job with the city has been offered a position. They have never wavered on that once. They've been very, very faithful, whether it be planning, whether it be business license, whether it be code enforcement. So I won't speak for them, but they've been very consistent in that regard.
Is the 3-day recruitment all in-house for county, or y'all opening it up to the public as well?
No, this is gonna be in-house.
We have 30 days left, and I'm here, I'm gonna speak on part of my people that can't be here today. The concern that I have is, the city has graciously offered everybody a job, but now you've changed the dynamics by shutting down 2 fire stations, and all those people that were there are gonna come over. We went through this 11 years ago. I've been laid off before, and my whole life's been changed. So, I know a lot of people got families in here. This is not a private job. Public service, it's hard to start over. So, my thing is I hope y'all consider the call, because running it yourself, the insurance service office and stuff, I guarantee you the business insurance and stuff, it's gonna go through the roof for 2 fire stations. So, I wanna thank the mayor and everything he's done for everybody, and, this is people's lives we're dealing with. I mean, I know y'all have a business to run, but, I just want you to consider everybody. We're getting pulled back and forth, so I just want you to consider that. Thanks.
Before the November vote, if it happens, we're contracting for police, fire, whatever other services on the Fulton Industrial Corridor. Do we plan on any additional negotiations at this time?
Well, that would be a decision by the board. The board right now has made a decision to provide service for this area. And if they change their mind on that, that's certainly a board prerogative, not mine.
No question?
Hey, good afternoon. Just to kind of piggyback off of something that someone else mentioned. In the end, if we choose or would like to stay with the county, we have to apply for that position. If we're not chosen for that position, then we're RIF at that point, unless we just choose to go work for the new city.
Well, so okay, how we structure this up to now is you are currently, if you take the job with the city, instead of the end, you enjoy the benefits of the RIF that was set up. Remember that, the benefits were certainly along the lines of if you're less than 5 years of service, for instance, you don't have to have the penalty of the contribution from the county instead of being prorated as full amount. So some other things, so that was in place already. So whether you take a job with the city or not, all the way to the end, will decide whether you get that benefit. as far as taking a job now with what's remaining of the county, it would be no different than you taking a job somewhere else in the county, for that matter. So you have an opportunity to stay with the county in a position that just happens to be in fire, potentially, in an area we're providing fire service. Police, in your case, right.
Police, right.
Yeah.
So for those of us who may have more than 20 years and we want to stay,
You still gotta apply.
Right.
we still have to apply.
So there wasn't an option for you before though, right? If we didn't have an area that was in if we had no area in jeopardy, let's go back a second. If everybody was going over, in other words, it would be that same situation, right? You either take the job with the city, right, or you don't have a job. The county would no longer have, if we don't have service, you would no longer have a job. That's what we've said all along. That's been very consistent since the very beginning. Maybe I'm not answering your question, Ken. That's right. Right. This is the first opportunity, this is the first opportunity we've out loud given you an opportunity to stay with the county in a position in the FID area.
Going back to what you said previously about taking the general fund out of the question, if you're in the general fund, then you don't have to apply.
That is what we're saying, exactly. Yes.
Todd, there was one question over here about, one question was, as a new hire. No, it's not as a new hire. In other words, if you, of your own decision-making, decide that you want to be in the FID organization versus in the new city organization, and you indicate that to us, and you're chosen, you just stay at your in your current job. So it's not as a new hire. There's no starting over or anything else.
Or the job you get hired into.
Well, or the job, but you're not a new employee, you're an existing employee.
I have a question. When is the opening dates for this to take place?
The 3-day recruitment?
Yes.
So like I said, I gotta get the org chart, remember, next week. So I'm trying to get, yeah, let's have one meeting here. Next week, we get the org chart, and obviously, we didn't move fast. So the goal would be, let's see, the first is on a Thursday, so the following week, most likely, which would be the week of the 5th, is that right? So sometime that week, Ken, I think we can commit to something along those lines. That sound reasonable?
Okay, so will all this be completed prior to the RIF date?
It'll have to be, that's the whole point of rushing all this forward, is we've got to get this resolved, obviously, because of the fire transition. Right, so yes, absolutely, we have to do it, the 3-day recruitment process, and literally have to make decisions within a couple of days. Very tight time frame.
As it relates to fire, because I know we had heard talks of you all, the county, taking some of Fulton Industrial Fulton Police Department, but as it relates to fire, when did you all make this decision, and who were the board members who voted on this?
So this decision was made at the board meeting yesterday, and it was voted on after lunch and yesterday afternoon.
So was it an executive session or was it out in public?
The vote was out in the open session.
Okay.
So this in theory could only last a year, or it could last 2 years, or it could last 3 years, or what are your feelings on it?
Correct.
On all of it?
Yeah, I mean, right, it's certainly let's just say that they pass legislation, right? And they come up with some kind of agreement, and then that legislation ends up being before the voters, and it passes, and that is, we no longer will need Fulton County providing services for FID. That possibly could happen. If it could get killed before that, not even go to the voters, right? It could go to the voters and then get defeated. There's all kinds of scenarios. We're not making up and saying what's going to happen because we don't know. But right now, we can tell you that those are the possibilities are there. And if it gets voted down, it could be Fulton Industrial, could be Fulton County's responsibility for a long time.
It's a countywide vote, correct?
Yeah, the vote is not just in this area. It is the entire county that will vote on this, City of Atlanta included. And that, once again, there is no vote unless there's legislation calling for a vote. And last year, there was 2 similar bills pushed forward by Roger Bruce, and those bills got vetoed by the governor. And I'm not saying the governor's gonna veto it this year, we don't know. He may or may not, I'm not even predicting. All right, we got a lot of parks people here today, right? All right, so parks is still right now on paper, June 4th, but maybe I could hear sooner. I know Tony and his working team trying to figure out all the things that need to be done on parks, everything from IT to property, you name it. So we're getting all that taken care of and ready to deed that over. Just a reminder, by law, parks will go over to the city at $100 an acre. And all the assets for the parks go over $1 a piece. Now, just a reminder, there are no parks in the Fulton Industrial District, so that doesn't apply to you guys. All right, any questions? Dick, you got any closing comments? Oh, we got a question.
Based on the last meeting, I asked the question regarding the RIF letters. Did you all look into that or find anything out?
That's right. We're gonna address the RIF letter with the folks that are in the general fund, right? Because I think everybody got a letter. Is that right? The entire
My
police
question
department?
was that it came out a mass email. It was not individually addressed to anyone.
Okay, well, we're gonna address the general fund folks, but a mass email to the police department still means it's in effect, though.
I think, remember the question was,
Yeah.
did they need to have an individual?
Right, I think we, go ahead, Ken.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the point when we get to the actual RIF date, those individual letters will be issued, but we just wanted to give one generic notice to all employees to make sure that we met the notification, but the individual letters are issued on the effective date of the RIF. Okay?
For the fire department, what that is, the 25th?
That's it, 28th,
No,
it's a Sunday,
Yeah, so they take over the 26th.
26th.
So which is a, if you got it, the day before. I think you got it, if you go back and pull that letter up, it was maybe the day before.
So we'll get the individual letters, what day?
The day before or the week before.
Yeah.
So you get the individual
Right.
letters.
Day before the week. Okay, so the week before the 25th.
Yes.
We can expect, okay.
Okay.
Wouldn't it have to be 21 business, or 21 days before, and that kind of closes?
You've already been put on notice 21 days before, that was the generic.
Yeah, the notice is out. Well,
You get a week prior to.
right. We'll make a decision before then on the FID service selections, right? So you'll know the answer to it, obviously before then as well.
What you're saying is you will have the people notified that they will continue to stay with the county. These will be the selected employees to provide services to the county, to FIB, before the RIF dates.
Yes. Thanks for the clarification. That's good to clarify that, Mike. All right, well, we're going to be up here answering questions. If you have any, Ken and I and Dick, so come up afterwards and ask us your question. And certainly got to get busy on this. And thank you for coming.
So we just completed our 13th meeting with employees in the FID district and in the city of South Fulton transition. And I specify FID district today because the primary focus today was explaining a Board of Commissioner decision made yesterday whereby the board has decided that we would continue to operate police, fire, as well as all other services on a direct basis as opposed to a contract basis for the duration that Fulton County is responsible for the FID. And while that sounds simple on its face, obviously it was a change in terms of how most people have been thinking about how this would get resolved. And it does present a new opportunity for employees. So they will have the opportunity to apply for and potentially be selected for services that would be performed in the FID. That'll all be done before any transfer is made to the city of South Fulton for fire and police. So they'll have both options. They'll know both options, I guess I should say, before that effective date. So while it is a change in one sense of the word, it is part of what was potentially anticipated, and we have been explaining in these meetings. But that's why it's so important to continue to have these meetings, and we would continue to have those. Again, Todd is the primary spokesman for every one of these meetings and does a great job of explaining in detail, but then also answering the questions. And I think if you're an employee, you really want to get the insight, make sure to not just look at the videos through the presentations, but also into the Q&A. Don't you think, Todd?
Right. Yeah, we were able to give them a sheet of paper today, which is a little bit different. We did a kind of a makeshift Q&A document to kind of make sure that we had the answers to the questions we thought they would ask. Certainly here we got a few more questions on top of that, but generally speaking, I think it becomes real simple. We're taking a big area we're managing now, and we're going to reduce that down to a small area called Fulton Industrial District. So ultimately, we'll provide that in the city of South Fulton, then we'll provide services for their city when they transition over. It's complicated because people are worried about their jobs and worried about where they'll be, but at the same time, ultimately, service needs to be provided, and these are men and women who have skill sets. So I think their fears of losing their jobs really are unfounded to a certain degree, because ultimately the city of South Fulton is going to want them, or we're going to want them in FID. And we actually need more police officers and more firefighters in this area. So ultimately, I think they're in good shape, and we look forward to getting all this behind us and getting solidified in providing our service for unincorporated Fulton. And I know the city is looking forward to getting going on their area and having a fire chief of their own and a police chief of their own.